This is Doom Metal, and my name is Greg, and I'm going to be discussing mixing it and a few other things. And I'm going to put the full video link in the description below. This is a local band called Druid Lord, local to Orlando, Florida. That's where I'm at. For those of you that watch me, monster truck, whatever stuff I post this time. I've been an audio engineer for 27 years, mainly live, but I still do some studio stuff if you want to call my spare bedroom that. And I'm going to dissect this mix and dissect the guitar solos too, because when we get to a guitar solo, I play through a guitar solo. It's going to sound like it's overdubbed. There are no overdubs in this session in the least bit, any way, shape, or form. This is all live, recorded through a Behringer X32 at the Haven in Winter Park, April 1st, I believe, of 2017. Right? And just remixed it here at the house. And 4 of these songs ended up on a brand new album release if you buy the vinyl version. So go check out Druid Lord, alright? And I'm going to do this video in 3 parts. This part here will be kind of an overview of the session, my miking, some thoughts. Part 2 will be, I'll start turning on the plugins, let you hear before and after, we'll do the mix. And part 3 will be this stuff here, the guitar solos. So right now it sounded like they, like the studios, like the rhythm tracks or something was added or layered or overdubbed. Nope. I'm going to show you how to do that and how it's possible to do that live in the right situation. So, do one more solo. And I'll stop it there. All right, a little echo at the end there. They're a pretty cool band. Doom metal tends to slow down things a lot, especially in the verses and choruses, and then they pick up the pace in bridge parts of the songs. They can write songs from a progressive rock standpoint where it's not just simple verse, chorus, bridge, and over. These can be very long songs sometimes. But that's the difference. The problem I've had with metal for years, and I said, this is my first love. I've been doing this 27 years, and I've done everything except orchestral. I've done everything under the sun. Metal can be difficult to mix, especially like I was an early sound engineer, live engineer for Deicide in the early days. I was in Sweden for the bombing. That's another story. And they just come at you at a wall of just blazing speed, which can be really difficult to deal with live, especially on smaller stages where stage volumes and things happen. The things I found about the doom metal that I've listened to recently or in the last decade is that the rhythm guitars are so important, and that's fair. Every music style has its thing, that the drums, the vocals, everything else are kind of buried. Everybody wants to sound so bassy and so low-endy, and not everyone can sit in that. But that's part of the problem here, is that the guitars and the drums are going to step on each other. And I am different compared to some of my fellow engineers on this stuff, on how I work this stuff. You listen to the live tracks on this album, the studio tracks were done by somebody else, and there's a huge difference in tones and things like that. And that seems to be the trend, and I've always been kind of against trends anyways. That's just my MO anyways. So when I decipher this and go through a lot of the things here, I'm going to minimize this stuff here. You can see I'm very, very, like, even for a metal engineer, I am extremely aggressive with processing. I'm going to start turning off some of that stuff there. Whether it's on the channels, on the buses, whatever. I'm very, very aggressive. I will keep turning knobs and pushing things until I'm a happy camper. And I see a lot of other people turning knobs and pushing buttons, but they stop themselves. And I have to ask them, are you happy? And the answer is not really. Well, keep going. Well, I'm afraid I'm going to be over EQing stuff. You know what? If the race car driver's got to over rev the engine to win the race, so be it. I've never understood that. Even in my early days, I was always told, "I don't do that. You don't do that. You're over EQing. There's blah 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 blah." Right. Now, mixing live, I mean, doing this stuff live is a three-part thing. When I work with artists, I attempt to allow them to ask them to allow me to start messing with some of their stage sounds and things like that. And some of them are cool with it. Some of them aren't. I'm very picky about microphones. So if I get microphones the way I want, I'll place them. Very picky about placement. But at the same time, I'm not afraid to use the console or whatever my resources are. So if you come into this saying, well, I'm afraid I might be overdoing something. I don't know. Are you getting the result you want? I know guys that they don't do crap with EQs and them happy, band happy. It's only wrong if they fire you, really. So I'm really Bob Ross on this stuff, but I have people like, you're not supposed to do that. Well, I mean, you're not supposed to drive the car in reverse, but I think some people have actually won races that way. But so, it just happens. So there you go. So the goal here is what we're going to do is, as you heard, a finished mix coming straight from the sessions. You heard the drums. Everything's pretty beefy. I'm going to show you how I got to that point. I'm not going to mix it from scratch. I'm just going to go turn on the plugins and show you guys case by case what I'm doing. Now, mixing's a weird thing. If you start off trying to mix a song by throwing up the kick drum and then tweaking it like, yeah, that's cool. And then the snare, yeah, that's cool. And then whatever, yeah, that's cool. Then you put it all together, it's not so cool. I mean, the best thing you can do, I don't care what style of music you're working with, after you recorded it, it's all done recording, whether it's live or studio, and it's time to move to the mixing phase, throw all the damn faders up and pretend that's all you have. Pretend for the moment you're in 1955. You don't have plugins. You don't have any of this stuff. Don't even move the pans. And see how far you can get with just the faders. And once you've reached that point, then maybe you start messing with. Some cats wait to move the pans later on to do their spacing later on. I tend to do it somewhat earlier because I already have a vision of what I want to do. And that will change things, and you got to bounce back to your faders, and then you start identifying priority instruments like here, kick drums, guitars. We just move around. The bass was dealt with later. The vocals were dealt with later. Other music styles, you probably deal with the vocals first and make everything else fit around them. And that's how that works. And you're playing, whack-a-mole, and at some point, you're going to win the game, hopefully. So you're going to be bouncing back and forth a lot, okay? And when you do a fader blend, make sure that your main buses over here are, and then my voice is driving at the main bus here, obviously. But I'll let it play when the music kicks in. Make sure your main buses are kind of cold. That means pull stuff down if it's too loud. So here it goes.
Frederick Regula has been found guilty of torturing and murdering people in his castle at Andamine.
So I'll hover around minus 15 or so. Except for some transients there. We got transients. All right, so that's cool, and maybe you want to take it a little colder and so on. I am pretty good. I'm doing quasi-mastering right here, so my main buses are like driven way up. But when I did send the songs out to be mastered on vinyl, the mastering engineer, the guy who pressed it on vinyl, got a minus 15-ish level with no brick wall limiters or any processing that let him do there. But I'm doing quasi-mastering here because this went on a video. All right. So let's listen to the session here. The very, very first channel, I need to close up my loop so we can hear stuff here. Right. There we go. You hear a ground buzz in the background. This is a Roland trigger unit that Eldon uses live. He uses a single kick drum with double pedals. That's called not noticing that the ground lift was on the DI box. That's okay. We'll gate it out. Now, the reason this guy's here, obviously it's easier to deal with live, but I want the attack out of this. This would normally be a Shure SM91 Boundary, those square microphones go in there. Those are actually condenser mics. They don't pick up much low end, but they pick up a lot of attack. I have a kick mic on the out, a big Beta 52 on the output of the kick drum where the low end tends to live. This will help kind of make the kick drum sound a little bit more natural, obviously. But when he lightens up on the beater pedals, it's not going to affect this mic as much. All right, so all that air is coming from a big space to a little space. It's being amplified anyways, and the waveforms are being all nice and happy. That's where your low end lives, is outside of that hole in the kick drum. All right, the snare. This is my depressing part of the show, is a 57. It wasn't supposed to be a 57. It's supposed to be a Beta 98, the little clip-on mics. Those are great sounding microphones, but they obviously have some issues at times because if they get hit once or twice, they're going to have issues. And it worked all the way up through line check and then failed right before the show. So the 57 was supposed to be the bottom snare, so obviously I had to move it to the top. And the reason that's depressing is like I'm probably one of 3 sound engineers on the planet that absolutely hates those microphones. I can't stand them. Sure, they've been used on every single album since the mic was invented. Sure, if you just, no pun intended in the name there, sure, if you just point it towards the general direction of an IM, it'll pick things up, and that's cool. I just don't like the way they sound, okay? And I wanted a condenser on top of that. So y'all can argue with me all day you want, but you know what? It doesn't make me right or make you wrong or vice versa. If you're like all 57s and you're getting what you want from it, cool for you, good for you. The tom mics, the rack toms here, well, the first 4 toms, the 3 racks and the 1 floor, those are 604 Sennheisers. And those are, the cool thing about these mics, you see them in their cradles, and I'll make this a little bit bigger here. Notice they're not stuck all the way down here. I mean, the snare mics kind of just sort of get knocked around over there, so that's not the prime placement. But like I said, the only good thing about a 57 is you point it in the general direction, it'll pick up noise. But these mics right here, the heads are pointed towards the stick attack, and I've moved them about halfway down in their cradle. Sometimes I run these things all the way up. I see so many people put them all the way down and take the mic heads and like mic the edge of the tom, and that sounds like a garbage can, honestly. It's just boing, like it's just nasty. A-B it, try it one time. So I don't do that. The only time that may work is if you got the thickest, heaviest, deadest drum heads ever in the history of the world, okay? And maybe that might be good, and I've done that before. But yeah, if you just stab right there, it's just, oh my God. Yeah, you'll definitely be doing meatball surgery on the EQs. If it's a super thick, heavy drum head, you'll get more low end out of it. But I recommend keeping the mic heads pointed to where the sticks. You may have them all the way down there, but keep them pointing towards the sticks. The floor tom here is actually a 421, and it's out of view there. So, and these are not bad sounding toms. That's not too bad. All right. Overheads are Shure SM81s. And I'm going to come back to a front view here, and that is a less than ideal overhead miking scheme. And Space Pair is a bad miking scheme to begin with anyways. XY is better because the mic capsules are close to each other. You won't have as many phasing issues. These are far apart, and the snare drum's allowed to sing there, so it's arriving to one mic earlier than the other because it's kind of off center. I'll share with you guys a solution, but why did I put the mics way up there? I put them way up there because I had no hi-hat or ride mic. And, you know, I'm not using them during the live mix. It's such a small place. I'm not using the overheads. I'm just recording with them for the remix. If you get them too close, then you're not going to encompass all the cymbals that you may need to encompass. And then the cymbals that are closer than the other ones are going to be a lot louder in volume because the distance ratios increase. When you move the mic further away, the distance ratios between these cymbals decreases. And if you want a lesson on that, that's called the inverse square law. So look that one up. But that's why I moved it farther away. So the benefit here is that the volume will be even. And yes, we'll hear later on, I will get that ride cymbal to stick out. I'll show you how we do that. It will stick out. I lose some space and depth, honestly. You know, he's going over here and playing the other hi-hat, and he's still kind of, you hear it from this mic. So that was a decision that I made, and I say, I know I'm sacrificing some depth and things like that, but I have to try to keep volumes even and not going hunting for ride cymbals and all that other stuff. So there you go. So right or wrong, I don't know. There you go. That first part of the song, you heard a track. That was it, just a playback, some voice. Here's the bass deal. This is coming off the amp. Okay. I do have a mic, but it's a Beyer M88. I ended up not using it because it became counterproductive. I started trying to make it edgier and things like that, and it just brought out more background noise. Tony does not play like that. Tony does not play with a pick. He's playing with his fingers there, okay? And furthermore, he's following along with the guitarist. I've worked with other metal bass guys. They follow along with the guitarist, but they also throw a little thing in there, like Terry Butler does that. He plays an Obituary now, but when he did the last Massacre album, he would find spaces to throw that in. You'd hear that little clangy sound from his pick going, yeah, I hear the bass player. So I abandoned the mic because what's going to happen, because the way Tony's playing, how he's playing his bass, and how he's playing with the rest of the guys, we're gonna melt his bass into the guitars, because the guitars, all these guys are tuned to standard B, really, really low, and they want massive amounts of low end, more than even that setup can give the guitar players. So we're gonna give the illusion of extra low end, but it's really, really gonna be Tony's bass melting in with these guys here. So he's playing with the rhythm player here. So even unmixed, take it out. All right. So we'll definitely hear a big difference when we deal with that. All right. Here's the guitars, and this is part one of the how did you do that with the solo secret. Is the fact that each freaking guitar rig has 3 mics on it. Each guitar rig has an AKG 414. That is a $900 studio condenser mic. Why are you using that on guitars? Because it's good. That's why. Condensers will pick up full range sound all the way to the top. Dynamics will run out of gas. If you're lucky, somewhere around 13 or 14K. But when Dynamics, you look at the microphone spec sheet, it shows that it rolls off, but there's another problem there. Let's assume my little eyeglass cloth here, I'll fold it up a little bit, is a microphone diaphragm, okay? Put it up here. And you hit a microphone with sound, the whole diaphragm moves. Fair enough. But with a dynamic mic, especially a larger one, when you hit it with a tiny little sound wave and it strikes that whole diaphragm may not move. Part of it may move, which sends energy down the line, but then the energy transfers towards the outside. This is what happens with loudspeakers too. And it'll lose energy, but it'll transfer some of it. Well, now it takes that sound that arrived like that and it stretches it out, and you get this weird swishy sound. That's phasing or comb filtering. And since a dynamic mic is basically a loudspeaker in reverse, the same thing happens. So over here on Ben's amp, we'll run Ben's. I'm going to take the group off here so I can do Ben's amp here. Okay. That 414 is right here in the center where as much high end he has is going to live. And then the 421 is over there on the edge of the driver. So we're have two strikes against us, but guess, as far as the high end goes, but guess what? That's not why the 421 is there. It's there for the beef, okay? And the 414 is there for the bacon, all right? And we're gonna combine the two to create our guitar sound. You know, if you don't have a 414, use a 57, I guess. They're smaller, so they pick up a little better on the highs. But and we'll talk about how we get rid of the highs on the 421 and we don't need it. So there you go. So now we also have third mics here, and this is Pete's mic there. Now it's going funky because of the time alignment here. I put a 414 on kind of a worn out driver, so not a lot of high in there. He plays an orange amp too, because the 421 is actually picking up more high end. This is a Sennheiser 609, and here's Ben's over here. They're the little square ones. Man, those are like generic guitar mics. Those are probably some of the best ones out there. The only style of music that I've had struggle with them has been some of the metal guys for rhythm sounds, but they're placed halfway in between. And basically what you have here is a great mic for guitar solos. So that's what we're using for guitar solos. All right. And then Tony, is that a 58? No, it is not. Hate those mics too. I don't care how many times they've been used. Here's the deal. That is an Electro Voice 967. I think it's been rebranded just EV9. It is the highest gain before feedback mic on the planet. And it's like that as long as you eat the mic. You literally have to get right up here on it. If you back off an inch or two, that's 30 decibels down. That's the only instructions I had to give Tony, and even how much he had to drink, he could remember that because I think he's using it to hold himself up. All right. You can hear the background noise. If this was a 58, it'd be rumbling right now and louder. That is rejecting a lot of crap back there. So that's an awesome mic. I use it for drummers who do vocals. Just same instructions. Just get right up on it. Cool? All right. So that's the microphones of the session, the basics of it. Like I said, get a basic mix together. You see some faders all over the place. Yeah, my gain structure there's some, I could have done a better job with it, but we're like go, go, go and play. So some of my stuff is a little out of whack here, so it happens. But yeah, get a basic mix together and all that kind of groovy stuff, and then go from there and keep going until you're happy. So what I do in part 2 here, we'll come back and I'm going to I'll go through the spacing and stuff. I'll start turning on the plugins, and the mix will slowly start to materialize over the next 15 or 20 minutes. And then in part 3, I'll do the guitar solos. Pretty cool. All right.